Lando Norris 4 is no more after he finished in P3 on the podium in the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix to officially win the 2025 Formula One championship in the final race of the season. Welcome back to the 305K. I'm Jackson Lang along with my co-host Tucker Hobart. We're here to debrief the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And while it wasn't the most exciting finish in the end, it was a pretty awesome, I guess,
Yeah, you
start,
kind
like,
of you have to look at it in the grand scheme of things, and I really do think that this season has been one of the best we've had in recent memory, and I do think it was a pretty fitting conclusion. I mean, Max Verstappen once again driving the wheels off his car, finishing P1. He had a great race, and in the end, it really did feel like all three of those guys put in a solid performance. Piastri
yeah.
had one of the moves of the season on lap one on his teammate. He ended up finishing second. Um, Obviously not good enough for the championship for him. Verstappen ended up 2 points behind, and Lando finishing P3 on the road, which was enough to secure him the championship. Um, I really, you know, for all the shit I've given Lando this year, I think he has come to deserve it.
Yeah.
I frankly don't think that he's going to make another run at the championship, and so I think that in the context of this season, he's earned a ring, and I think that it's important to mention that. But boy, Max Verstappen, one of the best
Un-
second halves of the season you can possibly have.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think just about everybody counted about, and I think we've said that about 10,000 times on this podcast, frankly,
Yeah,
but it's true. Like, we didn't think he had any sort of chance, and we kept saying, maybe he's come back, maybe he's come back, and then all of a
yeah,
sudden he really turns up the last couple races of the season. But you got to give him his flowers. And I mean, I think even in his post radio message, you could really see, like,
yeah.
he was
He's
sad that he
proved
didn't
himself.
get it, but he was like, I'm very proud of what we've accomplished in this like
Yeah.
season.
I do think that he has this great mentality of, I've shown everyone what I need to show them. I've put a, brilliant second half performance on the table. And I think that he really understands that. And there were some decisions from the race that I think kind of reflect that comfort in how he's performed. I really do. I was very surprised that he didn't back up the pack in the last 10 laps because it was kind of this concession of, I'm not going to win the championship just off pace here. Like, I, if I'm in that car, and obviously I don't have four championships to my name, but or if Lando Norris was in his position, he absolutely would have backed the pack up because
Mhm.
it's your chance to win a championship. You go out
Yeah.
and get it like that. I do think it was a questionable strategic decision. I really do think that if you have a chance to win the championship in that situation, you should be doing it.
Mhm.
But I do think that Max Verstappen has had this mentality over the last few weeks of the championship is just a bonus. I've already showed off my pace. I've already shown off my ability. So it's not a requirement for the championship. It's just a nice benefit of fighting for it.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think he just, you know, I think back in the pack up would have been hard, is kind of what I'm trying
Hmm.
to say. Like, even
Yeah,
if they did that, even if someone got in like a place in P4 to pass Lando, I think was it Charles Leclerc?
Charles. Yeah,
It was, oh, I definitely forgot. I knew he was there.
yeah,
Um, but like even if he would have passed him, I really do think Oscar is gonna let him through.
yeah. It would have been a little bit more hairy if there was a Charles Leclerc sitting between Lando and
For
Oscar, and he
sure.
would have had to drop down two positions. I just think it's interesting that he didn't use every tool at his disposal when
Yeah.
in 2021, in that championship fight, I think we would have seen them try every single thing they
Yeah.
possibly could to get that championship. And I thought it was an interesting parallel, as you called out, I should say. Yuki
Mhm.
Tsunoda really in that position to play some defense and just maybe one of the worst defensive efforts I've ever seen. I mean, it was pretty
Mm.
awful. I need to hear your thoughts about that. There was a little bit of controversy there, but at the very least, Yuki Tsunoda did not do a good job of holding him up.
So a couple people have seen, like I was very adamant on this idea of Yuki playing Sergio Perez's 2020 run role, like playing very good defense, maybe holding him up a bit, really giving him a good run for his money. It was atrocious.
Woeful. Yeah.
I mean, you sent me a meme. It's these like these security guards like guarding a soccer field, and they basically just let everyone
Just let
right through.
everyone by. Yeah.
And that's basically what it felt like watching Yuki Tsunoda try and play defense the other day. That
Yeah.
being said, I think did he deserve to get penalized for his move? Probably because I don't know. I mean,
I mean,
he
yeah,
kind of
probably.
made he was a bit that was a
He
bit
was,
close. That
yeah.
being said, I don't think Lando should have 100% be penalized. Like he went four wheels off the track. There's a vivid image of that to
Hmm.
overtake. I don't care if you get an illegal move made on you. You are not allowed to make an overtake. You didn't give the place back, and he didn't get a
Hmm.
penalty. And a
Yeah.
penalty that could have really shaken up the order. If Leclerc knows that if he's within 5 seconds,
Yeah.
like
Well, I think the even bigger part is so the rule is that you can only make um one defensive move when there's a car behind you. But the exception to that rule is if you're weaving to break a slipstream while the car behind you is safe enough distance away, which is kind of the gray area in the rule book. Um,
yeah,
and in this situation, what a lot of people were saying in support of the decision was that he moved once, twice, like three times back over the inside. But at the same time, that was clearly weaving to break a slipstream. That was not
yeah,
a defensive move until the last one to the inside.
yeah.
And to me, Lando Norris is the entire right side of the track to go to in that
Yes,
situation.
that's my
He is
problem
the
with this
entire right side of the
entire
track.
situation.
He was not forced off track in any way. If they had said driving erratically, maybe I see an argument there, but
Yeah,
there's no situation where he's forcing him off track here. And I
mm,
think that watching it live, it was such a clear off
yeah,
track move. I called it out immediately. You could see four wheels off. And to
yeah,
me, that has to be penalized.
yeah.
And I think it would have had McLaren gotten on the radio and said, give the place back immediately, it would have been a completely different situation. I think because Lando Norris was already away, the FIA doesn't want to be, the reason that they're giving it, like they don't want to be the deciding factor in a championship because that
That was what I
penalty,
was wondering. Like, I wonder if they were scared about another Abu Dhabi 2021 where they're like
yeah,
calling for their
100%.
like lives basically.
100%.
Um,
percent And it's generally a 10-second penalty as well, which if you're keeping up with the race order, Charles Leclerc did 7 seconds behind Lando Norris. So, effectively that would have put him behind. Obviously, it's a completely different situation if he gets
That's a big
penalized.
hypothetical,
Yeah, yeah,
but
absolutely. But I really thought it was, well, first of all, it's just sloppy from Lando Norris. You're going through the back markers. There's no reason to take that kind of risk. There's a fine line between being aggressive and making a championship move and being, kind of stupid. And I think
yeah,
that he was sitting right on that line. He had a double overtake on a couple guys, and that was, I think, a championship move. But then at the same time, you have this sloppy little off track overtake on Yuki Tsunoda that just feels unnecessary. He could
yeah,
have gone right around the outside. It's a corner that doubles back, so we would probably keep it. And if not, he has DRS for the next zone. So I just think it's a situation that Lando Norris is lucky that the FIA
yeah.
that Michael Massey isn't sitting there in race control for this race because I think that it would have gone the other way.
Yeah, I do too. It was it's such a rough situation because
Hmm.
I don't think this is true, but I almost want to say it feels like almost any other race, someone does that exact same move and that same style, it'd probably get penalized. But
I
I
agree.
mean, it was the final race of the season with the championship contender, and if he gets that penalty, then maybe he doesn't win the championship. It's just it's such a controversial call potentially, and I wonder if they were just making that call out of fear or
Yeah.
the no
No,
call technically.
I think it's definitely in their heads, and I think that it's something that has been talked about a lot, especially because 2021 is so, it's so steeped in this controversy of, the FIA and what they did to that race. And I do think
Yeah.
it's a different situation, but I really think that it was an illegal overtake, whether you like
Yeah.
it or not. I just think there's no way around it. But I will say that Lando, between the first lap and that one overtake, he did drive a pretty good race.
Yeah.
I was impressed by he worked his way through the middle of the pack really well
That
after
was
his first stop.
that was
Uh,
incredibly impressive by him.
that was probably the highest pressure. I mean, first lap and last few laps, obviously, of the championship.
Yeah,
In
but
your grasp was probably more stressful, but going through the middle of the pack is probably the biggest time of concern because there was issues with um undercutting and overcutting, and that's kind of the biggest factor in what could have changed the race. If he had trouble getting through and Charles Leclerc on pit stops ends up in front of him, that would have been a completely different race. Now he has to overtake Charles Leclerc. I will
mhm.
say it did feel like, I hesitate to say this, I feel like Lando was like friends with everyone on track, and it felt like I have this feeling deep down that one of the reasons why Verstappen didn't back up the pack is because you know, Lando Norris would hate him forever if he did that, and they're really neighbors back in Monaco. And
Yeah.
maybe that's a really silly opinion, but I just get that kind of feeling from Max that it wasn't worth his time. You know what I mean? He's a little bit bored with it.
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely think there was definitely some hesitation. I really
Hmm.
did. I was very impressed by Lando's ability to get through the middle of the pack. I thought if he was gonna like have some struggle, that's where it was gonna come. He had a lot to get through, and he just cruised right by him. Honestly, I thought he drove very impressively, and that's such a hard race to like do when you have that much pressure on you. I thought, honestly, all three of them handled it very well. They basically had
I agree.
instant free weekends. I thought it was very fitting. They all finished on the podium, all finished
Yeah,
top
for sure.
three for pole in like qualifying. Like I thought it was a very classy race weekend, if you want to
I
call it
agree with that.
that.
I agree with that. I will say the one independent factor that we thought was going to kind of meddle with that championship fight was George Russell, and he just did not show up on
Dude,
Sunday. That car lost so much pace. It was actually very interesting to me. He pretty much went nowhere, and it was really strange. The Ferrari came alive, and the Mercedes car just wasn't there like it was in qualifying. And so
yeah,
it left the situation where Charles Leclerc was the only one challenging, and it never. To be
it
fair, this
was.
Ferrari car this year, I'm very glad
Oh
it's in
my
the
god, it was
dumps.
so
It's never
bad.
been up there. It's never been
Yeah,
up there.
it was so
Um,
bad.
mhm.
Yeah, once Leclerc was chasing, the one little glimmer of hope I had was whenever Leclerc boxed a bit later than him and was gaining on Lando a lot.
Yeah, and then
Um,
his pace kind of plateaued. I think I kind of expected that because uh, Lando does this quite a bit where he kind of sits, and a guy will come within 4 seconds of him, and then he'll put
yeah,
his pace out there. He'll save the tire
yeah.
for a little bit, so he can get more life out of it. I do think Leclerc that entire race just seemed to be pushing as hard as he could. In the
I have a
first
lot
few
of
laps, he
respect
was
for
right
that
on the.
too.
Yeah, I absolutely do too. He was pushing. He was right on the gearbox of Lando at the start of the race. He just couldn't get by. This track's not the greatest for overtaking, but um, equal pace, he couldn't quite get by, and then pace fell away from him because obviously he was using that tire up a lot, sitting right behind Lando. And then the same thing later in the race, he just wasn't close enough. So I also noticed that you looked at those other top teams. Yuki obviously wasn't really close. Kimi wasn't really close.
Yeah,
Hamilton obviously was out of the picture. He actually ran a decent race, but just he's starting so low, there's no chance.
yeah.
So it kind of left not as many um you know independent factors that could affect the championship fight, and it just became a three-person fight, which is exactly what Lando Norris needed. And
Yeah,
Yuki Tsunoda had a chance to play that role, and just the worst way he could possibly
it
end his
was
career.
so
I have to be
bad,
honest.
bro. I feel bad, but man, that was pretty
It was pretty
pitiful.
rough.
But yeah,
Yeah.
um,
And he had that really tough radio message too when they were, saying, "Watch out, you have Lando like 3 seconds behind." He says, "I know what I
let
have
me
to
do it.
do.
Yeah, lead me to it.
Leave me to it." And then Lando just goes around the inside of him off track. But still, I mean, it was.
Yeah,
We were talking about Yuki maybe having a great race in his final race in Formula One for at least the foreseeable future. Just nothing there. It was just awful. I mean, it was
it was
genuinely one of the.
bad.
He didn't really show up until he had to play defense, and he didn't play defense, and then he
Yeah.
just went away, finished P13 or something like that.
So who
Um,
actually had a good race weekend? Surprisingly, not so. I kind of surprisingly was Fernando Alonso finished P6. That being said,
mhm.
even him and Stroll both in the double points was still not enough to finish over Racing Bulls, who had 0
Yeah,
points and still finished P5 or 6 in the constructors.
yeah.
Um,
I will say that the end of season constructors table, the big one to me is Williams P5.
that
And
we mentioned that, man.
yeah, I'm not sure it surprises me all that much, but it is kind of a very good sign for them that not only did they
P5,
show up to
man.
this season with that kind of attitude and that expectation, but they delivered on it. And going into the regulation change, it really sets a good precedent for them over the next few years. And obviously, they have that Mercedes power unit, which is said to be pretty good.
We'll have to
Right now,
see. Yeah.
that's the one that has kind of gotten the most press as being the most anticipated one.
Hmm.
Um, just to remind people, that is in the Mercedes car. Obviously, it's also in the McLaren car and the Williams car.
And the
Um,
Aston Martin.
and the Aston Martin as well. So those teams, honestly, all of those teams have a chance of maybe being in the fight next year. I think it's
Hey,
less likely for Williams, but
Aston Martin are gonna be good next year. I cannot. I'm already getting excited for next year. I mean, we've been waiting for this
yeah,
year literally since 2023, whenever Max was dominating. We were like, is it 2026 yet? and
Yeah.
we've had two great seasons, honestly,
Yeah.
in a
And
row.
I think to be fair, we look back on this and considering where F1 was in 2023, with one of the most boring seasons in the history of the sport,
Yeah,
we've absolutely gotten our money's worth and made up for it in the last 2 years. I last year
absolutely.
was brilliant. It was a great constructors fight. It was almost a great drivers fight. There were
Yeah,
people, I think there were 7 or 8 different
race
winners,
winners. Yeah,
which is unbelievable, almost unheard of.
yeah, yeah.
Um, this year, obviously, very different theme, but still super entertaining. One of the
It
best
was a
championship fights we've had in the last decade.
we had some awesome podiums too. I mean, we had Hadjar,
Hmm.
Hulkenberg for crying out loud. Like we'll
Yeah.
we'll get into all this kind of on our season in review.
Yeah, next week we'll
But
we'll do our postseason driver rankings and compare them to our midseason driver
oh
rankings, which are looking
boy,
very different. Um,
mm,
and I do think on that moment we should talk about some of those guys because this is a little bit of a season wrap up as well. But
yeah,
Carlos Sainz is obviously the most obvious one, as is Max Verstappen, where they really turned it around the midseason break. And I should say Ollie Behrman as well, who we really
yes,
disparaged at
yes,
the
yes, yes,
midseason
yes.
break, and he's absolutely come alive. Him and Carlos Sainz, of the drivers in the lower half of the field, have completely woken up from the midseason break and showed off.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought Ollie Behrman incredibly impressive. As a Hadjar had a great rookie season. Antonelli, honestly, I didn't think had a bad rookie season at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
I would
I
say that
just
the rookie disappointments for me. I think Bortoleto was a little bit disappointing, but I also think he was
yeah,
given a shit box. I don't think it's like a damning thing for him that he wasn't great.
yeah,
And
I
I
don't
thought
either.
Lawson obviously still categorized as a rookie, even though he's had some time in the sport, was
Yeah.
not great. And then
Doing Alpine
Doohan and
Colapinto.
Colapinto.
That Alpine is so awful.
Yeah,
Holy
I mean,
crap.
I think they were not really given a fair
Yeah.
stage. Maybe Colapinto had some more time to prove himself, but boy,
Colapinto.
I mean, Colapinto is pretty bad this year, and I
That
think
was
that
brutal.
he's going to need to turn around because right now he has no contract on the table.
Yeah.
I think he's in the team for next year, so that
He
really will be
is,
his last
yeah.
chance.
Yeah,
But
next year's gonna be a big year for
yeah,
Alpine.
as
But
we're kind of looking into the
who are
future,
they under for? Are they a Ford engine next year?
um,
Because they're
I'm
not
trying to think.
Renault.
Yeah, they're not Renault anymore.
I have
Um,
no idea. We'll have to get back to
we'll need to
that
check
because
that out.
clearly
Yeah,
we
we
don't
can
know.
talk
We
about
don't
that
know.
later. Yeah, we'll talk
Um,
about that in our preparation. We're going to do a
for
big
20,
video on
yeah, that's
all the
yeah. We're gonna
regulation
have to.
changes. But for the
Yeah,
rookies, I do think that to me as a Ferrari fan, the performance of Ollie Behrman has really made me more
absolutely.
optimistic about him. He's kind of the heir to the Ferrari throne after Lewis Hamilton retires, and I
Yep.
think that his performance, at least he's shown these really, really high ceilings, which is the most
Yeah.
important thing. I think you can have a driver who's kind of showing consistently okay pace and maybe getting some P9s, P10s. I think that's impressive in its own way, but for a guy who's joining a team that wants to be fighting at the top, I think you do want to see those super impressive big results. And that's the most important thing because you're looking for an exemplary talent, not just a, decent driver.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. I was very impressed. I mean, it was funny because it really felt like everything we said this year just got like totally reversed after we said it. I mean, at the
Yeah.
mid-season break, Ollie Behrman, low key, like terrible driver, like barely doing
Yeah.
anything.
We
And
we
all
were
of a
the ultimate
sudden,
curse, yeah.
we really were. I mean, I had a ton of big flops hit this year.
Yeah.
Hopefully
That was your best prediction, which is really ironic. I mean,
that was
just the
really
idea
funny.
that we
I
were only
can't
bad at
lie.
predicting bad drivers. I mean, it's
Exactly.
really funny.
It was no, I thought there was a lot of good from this season from drivers, especially. I was very impressed by Williams. I was pretty impressed by Racing Bulls, honestly. Aston
Everything
Martin
besides
kind of let me
Alpine.
down. Alpine, yeah, pretty bad. But
Alpine was
like Alpine was
horrendous.
atrocious. But I felt like every other team kind of had some bright spots. You know, you had Ollie Behrman P4 that one race. I think
Yeah.
also one team that we're kind of like, and we're talking about them right now, but like Haas had a pretty decent end of the year. Like Ocon
Yeah.
finished well in the last race of the year. Behrman obviously a couple good finishes.
Hmm.
Like they finished P8 in the constructors, but they really didn't have the worst year ever.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that I had very high hopes in them going into the season. So they kind of fall behind what I expected. But in general, I think they have a bright future. And I think that those two drivers are actually quite decent. Ocon, I think, has less of a ceiling than Behrman. But I think that next year, given a decent car, they will be a decent midfield team. And I think that we're gonna have a lot to talk about over this winter
Oh
break,
my,
which is good.
that's something I'm actually
Um,
kind of excited about. Is like
yeah,
this,
we've
like
got
the season's over. This podcast isn't going anywhere. So if you're like
yeah, we
sick
have
of
a
us,
lot to
then
still talk about.
I'm sorry, guys. We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah,
Um,
there's still a lot before we can go racing again in
yeah,
Melbourne next year.
yes,
So,
absolutely. There's two things I just want to touch up on quick. One is just a funny little thing that I have known for a very long time now, since July. MoneyGram is no longer going to be the title sponsor of Haas F1 team. Um,
mhm. This is
I
insider
learned
information.
this. I learned this in July. Yes, I mean, I wasn't struggling to keep it, but I did know this in July, so I just kind of want to touch on that because I think it's kind of cool. And then the other thing, just briefly, Helmut Marko retiring. He's done with Red Bull. Do you have any thoughts on that, or just
Yeah, I think that maybe it's a good sign for Hadjar in the second Red Bull seat. But I don't really know what he does. You know, I think that he's kind of ancient. I think it's probably nice that he's moving down. That whole Red Bull team has kind of seen a big shift with him
uh,
moving out now. Horner obviously moved out this year because of questionable reasons.
oh boy.
So
Well, that was
uh,
actually because of stakeholders and private. Whenever they got a big chunk of Red Bull got sold to private stakeholders, and they wanted Horner gone, so they fired him.
yeah, yeah, because of
Yeah, questionable things.
secret
But apparently the
things.
stakeholders were big behind, like it wasn't necessarily Red Bull themselves, but it was the new equity group that owns Red Bull or some of it.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
also learned that in July. Um, dude, I learned some interesting stuff that day. I won't lie.
hmm
That guy was very
hmm
David Paro. Not that he's gonna see this, but he does have a podcast called DP and McGee. If you ever want to check it out, I actually highly recommend it. It's like some sports stuff, some like marketing stuff. He's honestly, he was the reason I know any of this, he was the head of global sponsorships for MoneyGram, and he basically facilitated the entire sponsorship with Haas. So knew a ton of stuff, knew Gunther. I got a really interesting Gunther Steiner story from him. But interesting guy. Sorry, this is like totally me just going on a random tangent, but I figured I'd
Tangent.
mention. Um, but good race, honestly, great season. I think we'll get into
Yeah,
it
and it was kind of a
on our whole.
microcosm for the season as a whole. I think it was. I
Yeah.
think it was it's a really fitting way for the year to end, and I'm glad that we have a champion that I feel like has driven the car well over the last month or so.
Yeah,
Even though the point tallies have gone down, it's not really his fault for the most part. And I'm talking about
we are.
Lando here. So I think that it's sad to see the season go, but at the same time, um,
We
we
got
can
an
rest easy knowing that we're
exciting
going to
one.
have a great year next year as well.
Oh yeah,
And we'll obviously be here for it too.
we will
So
be here.
thank you guys for watching. This has been a great season, and obviously we're not going anywhere. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.